Bigger and stronger, Taiwan aims to increase its presence in the South China Sea by sending more vessels to its far-flung Taiping Island. We find out the significance of Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's visit to Beijing.
So I think what we're heading towards is a stabilised Australia-China relationship, but one which is constantly weighed down by serious points of disagreement which are not going to subside anytime soon.
Survivors of a massive earthquake in Nepal last week are hungry, homeless, and still bracing for more aftershocks. Plus, collaboration and exchange. Taiwan's Creative Content Fest is attracting record numbers of participants from abroad. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Taiwan will be sending more larger Coast Guard vessels to its far-flung Taiping Island in the South China Sea. As Rick Laut reports, it comes as the conflicting claims and a military build-up increasingly put the region on edge.
This is Taiping, the largest natural island in the contested Spratlys, an archipelago in the South China Sea with rich fishing grounds. Claimed by China, Vietnam and the Philippines, Taiping, also known as Itu Aba, is administered by Taiwan, whose capital is 1,800 kilometers away. But the country will now be increasing its presence here.
就我们的理解，海巡署它还是有规划它定期的相关的巡弋了然后现在一些比较大的吨位的船舰也会陆续部署到南海地区来。
The additional patrols are meant to better serve the 200 Coast Guard personnel already stationed on the 100-acre island. This comes as China, which claims Taiwan as part of its territory, has been increasing its military presence both around Taiwan and in the South China Sea. Over the last decade, China has reclaimed land in the Spratlys and built docks and airstrips on islands it controls in the disputed waters, often clashing with neighbouring Philippines. China has also increasingly shown aggression towards Taiwan, conducting military exercises around the island nation, as well as using cognitive warfare and cyberattacks. There are concerns that should Beijing actually attack, an outlying island like Taiping could be a target.
As China's interest in Taiwan seems to be growing, I think that Taiwan is right to be concerned that Taiping Island is an especially vulnerable outpost. And if China really decided that it wanted to do something and actually, perhaps apply force to force a change at Taiping Island, it would be very difficult for Taiwan to respond.
To counter the threat from China, Taiwan has boosted defence spending and lengthened mandatory military service. It says it is determined to protect its sovereignty, including its marine outposts.
南沙太平岛周边海域船舶动态，本属协同国防部军人有效监侦，对各项状况备有应对方案，且依现有能量可有效应处各种突发状况。
With overlapping claims, the waters around Taiping are becoming ever more turbulent. And by increasing its presence, Taiwan hopes to reinforce its claim and demonstrate its determination to defend it. Devin Tai and Rick Laut for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan says it will deploy more Coast Guard forces to Taiping Island after a standoff between US and Chinese ships there last week. Our reporter Sam Hui speaks with Ling Yingyou, Assistant Professor of Tamkang University's Institute of International Affairs and Strategic Studies, about the island's strategic significance in the region.
Taiwan has decided to send its largest Coast Guard vessel to Taiping Island because of the confrontations between US and Chinese warships in the region recently. How serious have those confrontations been?
主要是因为我们有太平岛。 那也同样的，今天南海它是台湾非常重要的一个海上交通线的一部分，所以其实特别是台湾就是一个岛屿。如果说我们会需要这一个海上来做一个资源的运送的话，那我们就会有这个必要，必须要去确保南海的安全。
What is the strategic significance of Taiping Island? Why is it so important to China and the United States?
那目前我们其实可以去看到，美中的话，我个人会认为不会完全是在太平岛，而是因为在这个地方的话，它自然会有很多的海域，也不会是只有说是美中。那特别是像是菲律宾或越南，其实这一些都会代表的是太平岛周围的一个海上的安全，会需要台湾更加的重视。那太平岛的一个战略意义，其实最重要的就是说，它上面是拥有淡水的。
Is Taiping Island important to Taiwan's defense?
今天太平岛它就是台湾在南海议题上面的一个入场券，台湾会需要去确保太平岛，让台湾可以在南海议题上面能够跟这些大国之间有一个对话的基础。那也同样的，今天太平岛因为它是一个天然的岛屿，会变成说它上面除了有淡水之外，它也拥有机场跟码头，也会是变成，如果今天其他国家占据了这一个太平岛的话，会把它变成一个非常重要的一个战略前进基地。
Why is Taiwan only sending Coast Guard vessels, not naval ships? Can those really defend Taiwan's sovereignty over the island?
因为其实今天其他国家都会是使用海警船来进行一个海上执法，相对来说的话，我们利用海警船，我们使用的是 Coast Guard 的话，是可以去代表的是说，我们在这一边是拥有一个司法的一个主权性跟司法的执法性。
That was Assistant Professor of Tamkang University's Institute of International Affairs and Strategic Studies, Ling Yingyou, speaking to our reporter Sam Hui. A ruling party lawmaker is calling for stronger disciplinary action in the Taiwanese military. He Zhiwei says harsher punishments for disclosing military secrets would prevent soldiers from breaking the law.
比方说延后退伍，或者是直接让这些所谓的义务役直接把他们退掉，这都是选项，也都在讨论当中。
He's call comes after several revelations in recent months that active duty officers leaked military secrets. In August, a lieutenant colonel and other collaborators were detained for allegedly leaking Taiwan's national defense secrets to China. In October, 5 people, including 4 military officers, were questioned over a stolen air defense missile system. A new report says Taiwan continues to see the most cyber attacks of any country in the world. Information security firm Checkpoint said Taiwan saw 1,500 hacks each week in the first 9 months of this year, up 2% from the year before. That compares with the 1,200 attacks that other countries see each week on average. Local analysts say Taiwan is targeted more because it has a lot of smaller companies and because of geopolitical reasons. Checkpoint says businesses need to boost cybersecurity as attacks using AI and deepfakes become more sophisticated. A government report on kidnapping scams says technology is helping criminals stay under the radar. Last year, criminal rings lured dozens of people into makeshift prisons with fake job offers. They forced their victims to withdraw money and run phone scams. Many victims were tortured and 3 died. A new report says cryptocurrency and messaging apps make these scams hard to stamp out. Taiwan's government watchdog, the Control Yuan, has told the cabinet to take action, but it's unclear what strategies it will take.
打造防诈呢，是政府的重要的一个工作。我们感谢监察院所提出来的一些改善的意见，我们会来积极改善，整合所有跨部会的这样的努力呢，来使得这个国人呢受到诈骗的情形呢，减到最少。
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has hailed what he called constructive talks with leaders in Beijing. Albanese met Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first talks of their kind in more than 7 years. Australia said the meeting was very positive, and China said ties were now on the right path. China is Australia's biggest trade partner, but their relationship has suffered from disputes over tech giant Huawei, COVID-19 and Chinese tariff hikes. Albanese says the leaders did not discuss Australia's military pact with the US, which has angered China. But he says he did restate Australia's support for keeping the status quo over Taiwan. For more on the summit, our reporter Stash Butler spoke with Benjamin Hershkovich from the Australian National University.
You've been following, developments in China-Australia ties for years now. What's the most surprising thing to you that's come out of this summit?
I think the most striking thing out of all of this is the 180-degree turn that we've had in terms of the rhetoric used by the Chinese government and the Chinese press to talk about Australia. It was only a couple of years ago that Australia was regularly the subject of scorn and contempt from senior Chinese government officials and the Chinese state-controlled press. And then all of a sudden, with this very rapid relationship repair, the Chinese press and Chinese government officials are lauding how visionary the Australia-China relationship is and how Australia and China can cooperate together. So it really is a case of having kind of psychological whiplash from the fact that Australia has gone from being the object of hatred for the Chinese press to being a country that is loved and adored and celebrated by the Chinese press.
The benefits for Australia in this, repairing of relationships are clear because China's Australia's biggest trade partner. But what does China have to gain from repairing this relationship, especially since Australia is still part of a security pact with the United States, which is China's main rival?
I think this is a really important question and one that we don't ask enough in Australia. China has very specific things that it wants to get out of Australia. The most important, I think, is entry into the CPTPP trade pact, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. Beijing understood that any viable route into that trade agreement went through Canberra. Another big aspect of this is that China, in all likelihood, is trying to reduce Canberra's inclination to deepen its security and military ties with the United States. Now, Beijing doesn't realistically think that it can get Australia to roll back on those decisions, but it would hope that by revitalizing ties with Australia and getting Canberra more on side, you would be able to avoid Australia becoming even more militarily intertwined with the United States.
What are the biggest obstacles to this relationship going forward?
So it's really a case of having a smorgasbord of options to choose from. There are simply too many obstacles to point to. Australia will criticize the way in which China is treating Hong Kong. It will criticize China's militarization of the South China Sea and China's destabilizing actions in the Taiwan Strait. By the same token, Beijing will be deeply dissatisfied with the way in which the Australian government is seeking to securitize critical minerals and reject bids from Chinese companies to invest in Australia's critical minerals industry. So there are going to be so many long-standing and deep points of disagreement, and none of those are going to go anywhere, even though the relationship has been revitalized. So I think what we're heading towards is a stabilized Australia-China relationship, but one which is constantly weighed down by serious points of disagreement, which are not going to subside anytime soon.
That was Benjamin Herskovich of the Australian National University speaking to Stash Butler. Rescue and relief efforts are ongoing in Nepal after a magnitude 6.4 earthquake rocked the country's northwest. The area is still experiencing hundreds of aftershocks as survivors look for shelter. Jeremy Olivier has more.
Sifting through the debris, people in this district in northwestern Nepal are looking for what's left of their lives after a magnitude 6.4 earthquake hit the area on November 3rd. Among some survivors, the feeling is one of total loss. More than 150 people have died in the quake and its aftermath, making it Nepal's deadliest since a pair of tremors killed around 9,000 people in 2015. As authorities continue rescue and relief efforts and assess the full extent of the damage, thousands of survivors are left looking for shelter. Many have been forced to sleep outdoors in the cold.
खाने घाँस बस्ने बास छैन हेर्नुस् इतिहास यस्तै हो हेर्नुस् यस्तो पटाङरीमा बसेर शीत लहरीमा बस्नु परेको छ घरभरि सबै गइसक्यो केही स्थानीय सरकारले.
For residents of this part of the Himalayan nation, located near the fault lines of two major tectonic plates, the trauma seems far from over. The UN says more than 380 aftershocks have been reported since the initial earthquake hit. Scientists are now renewing calls for Nepal to do more to improve its building safety. The country is not only prone to earthquakes, but is also vulnerable to flooding because of climate change. The hope is that Nepal can act to minimize the damage and loss caused by future natural disasters. Leon Lien and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Find out why South Korea's entertainment industry might have lost its squeaky clean veneer.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, like Thailand's capital, please follow us on social media.
Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Yin Khvat. Today we examine China's engagement with Africa.
So, unfortunately, this very aggressive form of cultural revolution-like politics in China seems to be moving forward in this modern era.
This grave injustice is happening.
The issue is, what can the U.S. do to help strengthen Taiwan?
We need that kind of mindset to prepare for the warfare.
What implications does this have on Taiwan and the region as a whole?
Just like Ukraine right now, you need people to understand we're doing this for our own country.
Reaffirmed our support for the Taiwanese ability to make their own decisions about their own future.
Relationship between the United States and it's very hard to duplicate in the short time. Taiwan still can continue being the leading position if we put efforts on R&D.
And you are riding on a wave. This is exactly the time you need to double down.
Or I did not realize I am actually running to be the first Asian woman in the state senate. Our next generation, they can see Asian American is as equal and have the same platform.
Taiwan Talks provides a platform for the voices and perspectives that are shaping our country. Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. Calls for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza are increasing as today marks 1 month since the outbreak of the war between Hamas and Israel. Rosie Grenenja reports.
A graveyard for children. That's what the United Nations Secretary General has labelled Gaza as he renews calls for a humanitarian ceasefire.
We must act now to find a way out of this brutal, awful, agonizing dead end of destruction, to help end the pain and suffering, to help heal the broken, and to help pave the way to peace, to a two-state solution.
And thousands of people around the globe have echoed those calls. Gaza is facing a humanitarian emergency, with Israel implementing a total blockade on the Strip, its population of 2.3 million suffering from a lack of food, water and medical supplies, with 60% of the enclave's medical facilities out of service due to a lack of fuel. Gaza's health ministry says more than 10,000 people have been killed in the month since the conflict started, majority of those women and children. The war began after Hamas, the militant group who runs Gaza, launched a surprise attack on Israel, killing 1,400 people and taking 242 people as hostages. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't be backing down.
Well, there will be no ceasefire, general ceasefire in Gaza without the release of our hostages. As far as tactical little pauses, an hour here, an hour there, we've had them before. I suppose we'll check the circumstances in order to enable goods, humanitarian goods to come in, or our hostages, individual hostages to leave.
At a rally in Jerusalem, Israelis demanded the release of the hostages.
ולא עוד שבוע, ולא עוד חודש, ולא עוד שנה. תחזירו אותם הביתה עכשיו.
And the faces of those hostages beamed onto the walls of Jerusalem's old city, while candles were lit at the Western Wall. The Israeli Defense Force has intensified strikes on the Gaza Strip, targeting what they claim are Hamas infrastructure. They say they have hit 450 targets in the past 24 hours.
פוגעים מאוד מאוד קשה בחמאס, פוגעים בהנהגה של חמאס, פוגעים במפקדים, פוגעים במחבלים.
The Israeli military is also battling fronts on the West Bank and Hezbollah militants on the border with Lebanon. But they're concentrating their efforts on Gaza, where they now have troops on the ground searching inch by inch for Hamas militants. Patrick Chen, Reese Ayres and Rosie Grenenja for Taiwan Plus.
The Israeli representative to Taiwan has called for the safe release of hostages being held by Hamas militants. Mayor Yaron made the call during a vigil at Israel's office in Taipei. She says Israel's military has rescued one hostage, but hasn't had any updates on the condition of the 242 still being held captive. She thanked the Taiwanese community for its support after her office received hundreds of flowers, candles and cards from schools, families and individuals. Yaron also asked for support from the international community.
We need to do everything that we have in power to have an international voice that is very clear, saying you do not harm civilians, you do not kidnap civilians. If this was done in Israel and the world will not stand strong against this, it will happen in Taiwan, it will happen in other countries.
South Korea's entertainment world is reeling from drug scandals involving two of the country's biggest stars. John Van Trieste has the details.
Hwan Ji-young, better known by his stage name G-Dragon, is used to the spotlight. He's one of K-pop's hottest acts. Today, though, he's not waving to fans, but attempting to maintain his innocence. He's accused of taking illegal drugs and has come to this police station for questioning. He says it's not true.
저는 마약 관련 범죄에 대해서 사실이 없고요. 그걸 밝히려고 사실 이 자리에 온 거니까 지금 사실 긴 말 하는 것보다는 빨리 조사를 받고 나오겠습니다.
But G-Dragon's case isn't the only one rocking the Korean entertainment world this week. Lee Sun-kyun, star of the Oscar-winning film Parasite, is also accused of a drug offense. He says he's told the police the truth, but didn't say anything further.
그것 또한 다 솔직하게 제가 기억하고 있는 거 다 사실대로 다 말씀드렸습니다.
These cases come as South Korea's president leads a crackdown on drugs in the country. But regardless of whether anything comes of them in court, the accusations add to a series of drug and sex abuse scandals, as well as high-profile suicides that have rocked the clean, conservative image the country's entertainment industry strives to present. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
US-based co-working startup WeWork has filed for bankruptcy. The company has struggled to cover the expensive leases for the spaces it rents. It's also lost many of its corporate clients after the COVID-19 pandemic led to more people working from home. WeWork was once the most valuable startup in the US, valued at $47 billion at its peak, but its stock has fallen more than 98% since the beginning of the year. As of June, the company had more than 750 locations worldwide, including one in Taipei. Taiwan has recorded its first ever death from Mpox. The Centers for Disease Control says the case was a Taiwanese man in his 30s who contracted the disease in August. He had a pre-existing condition that compromised his immune system. His condition worsened in October and he died Wednesday last week. Taiwan has recorded 351 cases this year of Mpox, formerly known as monkeypox. Taiwan's health ministry is giving a 4% pay raise to nurses working at its 26 hospitals. It's part of a series of bonuses and subsidies offered to the 8,000 nurses working at government hospitals this year. The health ministry is also advising private hospitals to raise salaries amid a nationwide nursing shortage. But nurses' unions say that not all hospitals are likely to do so.
如果公务预算没有办法介入，要等到营运，我觉得这个困难度会越来越高，而且对偏乡的医疗反而会造成更大的困难。
Taiwan's Creative Content Fest has opened in Taipei. The organisers say a record number of international participants are at this year's event. Eugene Huang has more.
The bustling streets of Taipei, shown in 3D time-lapse scans. This is a part of a British team's project called Frame Rate, Pulse of the Earth. It's the first time the project has gone international, and its first stop is in Taiwan. This work showing Taiwan's partnership with other countries is just one of the installations on display at the Taiwan Creative Content Fest. The event offers a platform for people in the creative industry to meet each other and find collaboration opportunities. The organizers say the number of international participants this year marks a new record.
单一市场喜欢的题材会有它的局限性。那这一次借由这么多国家，29个国家的参与，可以看得出来说，你各种的题材可以在这个地方上找到不同国家喜好的口味，所以让整个创作者对创作者来说，它的多元题材性也可以找到更多市场的可能性。
The event also highlights interdisciplinary creations. 21 works show future trends in the creative industry.
Here in the innovation section, you can see new ideas made real through forward-looking technology. And in this virtual library, serious topics can be discussed in an easygoing, comfortable setting.
The Uncensored Library is a creative attempt by Reporters Without Borders to share information with countries that have little press freedom. It hopes to bypass digital firewalls by using a virtual game as its medium. Organizers say the event can accommodate highly diverse works like this, thanks to Taiwan's openness.
在数位的国度里，台湾绝对不是小国，我们可以做大国。但是在全世界网络共通的状况底下，我们也不要忘记，我们其实文化内容产业就在进行我们文化领土的保卫战。
The freedom requires strong political, industrial, and commercial commitments, so creative exchanges can happen in a vast market.
By holding the festival, Taiwan hopes to take a leading role in Asia to support creative industries and to connect creators here with collaborators around the world. Kamashi and Yujin Huang for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Take care and see you next time.